McLeod, California is a small town with a little over 1,000 residents at the time that Karin Mero lived there. It's not just small in terms of population, it's geographically small as well, with no more than 30 roads in the main area. The town is situated near the southern base of Mount Shasta. Its original purpose was that of a logging community, but now it's primarily the home for federal forestry workers. The area around McLeod is well known for fishing, hiking, and other outdoor activities. Karin Mero, who was 27 years old at this time, was separated from her husband and instead was living with her boyfriend, Ed Henline Jr., as well as his parents. This house was very near Highway 89, which is the main road that runs through the middle of town. Her sole source of income at this time was her disability payment that she received from the government. On February 15, 1997, Karin was last seen at her boyfriend's house. The details of her disappearance are unknown, however, since she was not reported missing until October of that year, a full 8 months since she had last been seen. The delay was due to the fact that it was believed that she had left on her own. No search efforts are known. Hannah Zaccolini, who will be covered in a separate video, disappeared from this same area in June of the same year. The Henlines were also questioned for Hannah's disappearance, but nothing seems to have come from this. Both of their cases are still open. Nobody believes that either girl would have left the area voluntarily. Let's review the main points as discussed in the book. Karin, who is 27 years old, went missing on February 15, 1997, from McLeod, California. She was not reported missing until October of 1997. It was believed at the time that she had left on her own. Her boyfriend's family was investigated for another missing persons case. Nobody believes that she would have left the area voluntarily. Please keep these points in mind. We will be addressing each of these and determine if they are accurate statements, given the evidence that we're able to dig up. The sources that I will use will be cited in the description below. You may notice that 2 of these points directly contradict each other. Don't worry, we'll get to that. I encourage you to do your own research and not take anything that I or anyone else say at face value. I don't have any other relevant information about the background of the area, besides what's already been shared. But before we begin the review in earnest, I want to note that every single case that I submitted a Freedom of Information Act request for that was investigated by the Siskiyou County Sheriff got blanketly denied due to cases being ongoing. Karin Mero, who was 27 years old at the time of her disappearance, had already had some difficult life challenges, even at this young age. In 1994, she had a liver transplant. This transplant required her to take medication frequently in order to keep the transplanted liver healthy. The cost of this medication was around $2,000 a month, which was subsidized by a disability check that she received. In addition to her medical issues, she appears to have lived a troubled life before her disappearance in February. This troubled past may have contributed to her case not being solved. To be clear, the idea that any of these factors played a part into the police response for her disappearance is not the fault of Karin. The authorities treated her differently than they would have treated someone else. Let me explain what I mean. Before Karin went missing, she was allegedly involved in some drug activity. This activity eventually resulted in a warrant being issued for her arrest. We'll get to why that's relevant in just a moment. We don't necessarily know the exact day that Karin went missing. All we know is that Karin's parents, Bob and Alice Netchell, last saw their daughter on Valentine's Day when they delivered chicken noodle soup and cough syrup because she was not feeling well. After that, they were unable to make contact with her. They grew concerned and they contacted the sheriff's department for help in May. They were advised by the sheriff's department to not report her missing. According to them, she was probably just lying low due to the warrant that was out for her arrest. They continued to discourage the report of her missing until eventually taking the report in October. Again, this is not the fault of the family nor Karin. Here is what Bob, Karin's father, had to say about this matter. Quote, "They," referring to Karin and Hannah Zaglini, "should be afforded the protection and services no matter what lifestyle they had." Close quote. I concur with Bob. There appear to be no serious search efforts, at least not comparable to how we normally see them in Missing 411. Instead, we have to go off some other clues that we have. Despite supposedly having disappeared of her own volition, according to the police, Karin's pocketbook and other personal belongings were left at the Henline home. Ed Sr. and Debbie Henline, Karin's boyfriend's parents, were suspected of writing checks on Karin's account after she had disappeared, all the way until December when they were caught. In May of 1998, the following year, Alice and Bob Netchell were able to retrieve 2 of Karin's rings from a jewelry store in Mount Shasta. It's not clear who sold them to the shop. Throughout 97 to the early 2000s, the Henline home was searched many times. This resulted in a number of unrelated charges, such as firearm possession by a felon and possession of drug paraphernalia. In the meantime, Bob and Alice have been subjected to horrific treatment from prank callers. In one call they received, the caller described Karin's decaying corpse to them in great detail. As of 2013, the last time I see Karin mentioned in newspapers regarding the legal status of the case, Karin is believed to be dead, most likely murdered. The Henlines are considered persons of interest, according to that paper, but that was 10 years ago. The last official coverage I see, again regarding the legal status of the case, is KTVL 10, who ran a story in 2019. In that article, they call the Henline house a known party house. They go on to assert that there were a lot of arguments in the house between Karin and Ed Sr. The detective that they interviewed did say that the case is being investigated as a homicide at this point, as is Hannah Zaglini's. Let's look at Missing 411's conclusions and see if they're still valid given the information that my research revealed. Karin, spelled with an I, who was 27 years old at the time, went missing between February 14, 1997 and May 21, 1997. The Sheriff's Department did not accept her missing persons report, or at least did not regard her as a missing person, until October due to a warrant that was out for her arrest. Her parents were adamant that something was wrong, but authorities refused to investigate until months had passed. Now, after actually doing their jobs and looking into the case, authorities believe that Karin is dead and regard her case as a homicide. Lastly, this case does not belong in Missing 411. It doesn't remotely fit the profile. It doesn't fit the theme. I have no idea why it's in the book at all. I am, however, grateful that I had the opportunity to learn about Karin and her case. In my opinion, this was a supreme miscarriage of justice, largely affected by the prejudice of those whose job it was supposed to be to protect Karin. Instead, she was brushed aside and the reports from her parents were dismissed. All the while, any evidence of what actually happened to Karin was left to vanish over the months before anything was actually done. Who knows what may have happened if the sheriff's department had taken the time and care to treat Karin like a human being and give her disappearance the concern and investigation that it deserved. Once again, I'd like to thank my patrons over at patreon.com for their very generous support that allows me to continue making these videos. In particular, I'd like to thank those of the public recognition tier, which include the anonymous user, you know who you are, thank you, as well as Nigel B. So, thank you, patrons, and thank you for watching. Until next time, take care.